أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another Ilm Feed podcast episode. I feel really happy to hear from so many sisters and brothers in the last episode commenting, after Dr. Haifa was with us, commenting about where you're from, because we were talking about all the places that the Ilm Feed family are from, everyone listening. And I found out that, subhanAllah, we've got listeners from all sorts of places I didn't even imagine, mashallah. So welcome to all of you, and please do share the Ilm Feed podcast with your family and friends so that more and more people can benefit. Alhamdulillah, today I've got a lovely guest. Her name is Dr. Mahera Ruby. Dr. Mahera is a teaching fellow at UCL Institute of Education and visiting fellow at Goldsmiths. Her PhD focused on intergenerational learning in families who originate from Bangladesh. She graduated from the University of Sussex in chemistry, and she spent the best part of her voluntary and professional life talking and listening to people from all sorts of backgrounds. During her time as a research fellow at Goldsmiths, she co-authored her first book, Interconnecting Worlds, Teacher Partnerships for Bilingual Learning, and Family Jigsaws, Grandmothers as the Missing Piece, Shaping Bilingual Children's Learner Identities. MashaAllah, and hopefully we're going to go into some of that today. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Mahera.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. We bumped into each other, didn't we?
Yes.
Because you're at UCL, and that's kind of next door to SOAS.
Yes.
So, mashallah.
That was a lovely interaction.
Yeah, surprise,
Alhamdulillah,
mashallah.
yeah.
I didn't realize you were there. So, please tell us a little bit about your background. Are you a first generation Bangladeshi from in Britain, or tell us a bit more about your background?
Yes. So I'm from a family of 9 siblings, and mashallah. And my father came to the UK in the early 70s, and we joined him. So 8 of us, with my mum, we came and joined him here in 1980. So I was about 8 years old. So when we came to this country, 8 siblings, my mum had experiences of sort of living in the city a bit. So my father was an academic as well when he was in Bangladesh, and he came to this country as a minister of religion. So he was an imam here, mashallah. So back home, his academia was in Islamic studies, Arabic and Islamic studies. So when we came to join him here, so my mum had 8 children between the ages of 20, and my younger sister was born when we came here. So we came in 1980, and we started school locally. So me and my older sister, we joined local primary school. My younger 2 siblings, they went to the nursery. So we kind of set up home in Tower Hamlets.
Okay, so that's East London.
East London.
Yeah.
So what was wonderful was that the sense of community that was here. So when we first came, it was a friend of my dad's who we stayed with. So his family was back home in Bangladesh. So we came and stayed at their place. And it was just the generosity of the community that was already here that welcomed us. And I do mention this in one of my books, that what sort of hit us when we first came, particularly me, my reflection of coming here, was the change in weather. So it was snowing when we came. So it was February. It was just white. Everything was just white. And that cultural shift. And also seeing, so a bit of my background in terms of growing up here was seeing how my mum transferred her life from a village. It takes a village to raise a child. So coming from that sort of village background, and trying to get us to have better opportunities at education. So we then went, me and my older sister went and stayed with my sister who was married, so that we could have a better access to education with her. So separation from children. So she had to juggle quite a lot. She used to take care of my grandfather, so he was very reliant on, because she was the eldest bride, the daughter-in-law in the family. So she had a lot of responsibilities which she had to sort of severe, and then come here to a flat on the fifth floor of a high-rise building. There was a lot of racism in the local area, and just being able to protect her children. But the other interesting thing was seeing that we were othered in our own community. So at school, there weren't many Asian children, but the Asian children that were there was from a different part in Bangladesh. And so I ended up spending a lot of time with children from other backgrounds, so white, black, mixed race, And one of the ways I would vent that energy in a way was to play a lot. So I would play basketball, whatever was going, football. And at home, there was a bit of tension with my mom because I'm a girl and navigating all of that. But my brothers, as siblings, we were really, really close. So what then started to form was this watching my mom become a community activist. But her environment was that women didn't go out. They were very much at home, looking after the family. And the men were very much the activists, and they're going around. So my father, in essence, was the leader in the community. He was very involved in the community. And my mom was supposed to be the carer, the mother, the homemaker. But what we started seeing was she was organizing in the community. So she would drop us off to school and speak to the women who would come to drop the children off. And she realized that there wasn't a possibility of gathering anywhere else. So she used to capture those snippets of moments that she would get with women. And at the time, people weren't wearing hijab. Those who were very closed off from the community. So there was a lot of dynamics going on. But mashallah, what she found a route to the community. She started to teach children in our home Arabic. She wasn't very well lettered in Arabic in terms of the reading, and so as a family we used to spend time at the weekends, particularly in the morning after Fajr, reading Quran together. And I used to observe, this is my personal observation on my mum, that she would learn to read Quran from my brothers and my father, and then in the evening she used to teach the children. So her journey of learning and equipping herself, there was a certain amount of desperation, the passion to create change. And the reason I'm sharing this story is because I feel that my journey with her, there was times where we didn't get on as mother and daughter. There was a lot of tension between us and resistance. But how she then became my absolute role model of who I want to be, what I want to do, and how my life, mashallah, alhamdulillah, has come to a point where I see that I'm carrying on from where she left off in some ways.
Is your mom still with us?
No. So, subhanallah, she passed away in 2014, and that was a marker on all our lives. Of her janazah was a testimony to all the lives she had touched.
Wow.
Subhanallah, it was here at the London Muslim Centre. And we had to open up floors, we had to open up halls to accommodate, although there were other janazas happening, the sheer number of people who came to the janazah was a testament. To this day, my dad always says, how does she manage? Where does she have the time? Raising 8 children, doing the work she did. How does she have the time? And it was just watching her multitask, not waste any time, and then be able to spend time with the children as well. We very quickly realized we're not the center of her world, but we are a part of the world she wanted to create. And that's become my kind of motto, in a way, that we focus so much on fixing certain things in our lives, but actually that consume us and take our attention away from other important things. And maybe doing the other important things may give the thing that you're focusing on so much the space to take some ownership. And it's an amazing lesson that I've taken on board from my mum's journey, how she facilitated my father to be the community leader, but actually she was the change maker.
She was the backbone.
She was the backbone
of the whole thing.
Yeah, and women's role, and what does feminism mean? Actually, what does being a Muslim woman mean? It's a lot to take on.
Yeah.
But she left a very powerful example, mashallah.
So when you say community leader, do you mean a religious? Was he a religious leader? In what capacity was your?
He was an imam in different parts of the country. But when we joined, my memory of him was that he was a chair of the board of trustees at the masjid here.
Mashallah.
Mashallah. So in that sense, he was doing his role as the chair of a masjid, but also he was very much part of organizing in the community. So the halakas, the programs, there was a community organization that he was a part of. Why I mention my mum is because the women weren't very much part of that fabric.
Okay.
Of activism, or just activism in the nature that where you there's personal development. It starts off with personal development, which then breeds the desire to change others who may not have access to it. So it's a roll-on, it's a ripple effect that happens, and ultimately it's the women that raise the children a certain part of their life and has a lot of interaction with the children. So my mum was able to organize that part. The resistance from the men was that we are out, we do that, women need to look after the home. It was very traditional in a lot of cultures. We have that idea, but what was different was that my mum was given the opportunity by my dad, I guess, to be able to feed that part of her need. She needed companionship. And what we noticed was that where women were suffering from mental health issues, isolation, that can trigger off lots of other things, women were beginning to generate circles of support where they just talk about their children and learn a bit of Quran. And mainly it was just that, what we call now coffee mornings. Where women would get together and just look after each other. And it was such an amazing insight and foresight that my mum managed to have, maybe learning from what my dad did and being able to observe what was happening parallel, that she could do something like this for the women. But it was all, I think it started off with a need of hers wanting to be met. So she needed companionship. She came from a village. She came from an environment where there was lots of women there to support her, to be with her.
Because they knew what community was.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
I'll tell you a funny story. Like, my dad tells me that when he first arrived in the UK, this was like in 1978 or something, he said he was met by Dr. Khalim Siddiqui, who was from the Muslim Institute at that time. And he was the one who invited my dad. And he said he found a note, I think it was in his flat that Dr. Khalim had set up for him. And it said, and like you mentioned, the weather.
Yes.
That's the first thing that kind of hit everyone, right? Yeah. Like coming from India. It's kind of like, And he said that the note said, "Welcome to this God-forsaken country."
Subhanallah.
Welcome to this God-forsaken country. And he meant the weather, I hope you like the weather type thing. So I think we can't underestimate what a big change it was for the men and the women who came over here. But what I find interesting, and by the way, no wonder you're interested in family, because everything you just told us. Yeah. Mashallah, a big family. You're seeing lots of generations interacting.
Yes. There was a time where I felt quite overwhelmed by the cultural kind of setup and the makeup and the expectations. So when I did want to go away to university, there was a part of me that wanted to escape this community. And Allah's mercy, alhamdulillah, I think, he knew what I needed, obviously, and the making of me. So luckily, alhamdulillah, my brother was going to the same university, so it coincided, and my father agreed. And I make dua for him to this day. You know, alhamdulillah, that was just what I needed to break that cycle of negativity in a way about the community. And you know, going away to university, my mum and dad went with us, with my brother, dropped us off there. We were in different halls, but my halls, I was sharing with 5 other Muslim girls. And that in itself, I don't think happened before. And I don't think it happens now. But alhamdulillah, while I was there was that opportunity for me to be in a flat hostel, sort of, you know, university campus with other Muslim girls. But it was when they left, you know, watching their backs go off into the car, it really hit me that, oh my God, I'm by myself. Now I can't blame anybody. Now the onus is on myself to be the character that I want to be. And my mum, although she was a very public figure in the community, she was very quiet on certain things, which is also a powerful thing, that when my dad made a decision, she would respect it. But we knew she didn't like it very much. So the fact that I went away to university, I don't think it sat well with her. Yeah. Being a mother, I can totally understand now. Of all the potential things that could happen. And to this day, I always think, how did my father agree so easily? My brother was there, alhamdulillah, I had a mahram there, and it was, but I just needed that space, like I was saying, eyes to be off me, to be able to know who I am, and to be able to analyze myself and reflect. Definitely. And it was a journey, and I needed that, because that's what made me come back every weekend to be part of the Muslim community that I was trying to run away from. And it wasn't the Muslim community I was trying to run away from; it was the cultural community. And it's the Deen that pulled me back. The halakas, the circles that we used to have a circle at the time, a Settle Street circle we used to call it, and I used to come back for that warmth, the sisterhood, and that's what kept me going, having that dose once a week, and then going back to university and refocusing on what I needed to be. I was the only hijabi on campus, on my course, the only Muslim woman. You know, I ticked all the boxes, and just being a part of the tick box exercise, is that what I wanted to be? And it started to mean, my mum's role started to mean more and more to me, that I can shape my identity, I can shape my trajectory of where I want to be.
SubhanAllah, it's like it's when we leave our parents, isn't it, for the first time? That's when we realize all the kind of things that they've been doing for us. Absolutely. And that we've been taking for granted. Yes. And I completely identify with that. I met some teenagers actually last week, and one of them was asking me, you know, about moving away from home for university and the pros and cons of it. And I think you've kind of highlighted that, really. I mean, the pros of it are that you do have a bit of an adventure, I would say.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? You get to find out who you really are, what your personality really is, and the things. Get a bit of time by yourself to think about, you know, where you want to go and where you've been, and just take stock of things, and you know, and become a bit more self-reliant, I guess. But on the other side, there is that, especially when you're young, that loneliness, isn't there? When your family is not around, and quite quickly the kind of glamour of it can wear thin. So I think it's important for people considering moving away from family for studies to bear all of that in mind, that you know, having family around is like such a big safety net. Absolutely. It helps you to kind of not have to think about quite a lot of things, and that we don't realize. But at the same time,
it was interesting, because I think having my brother there, and having a setup at home where we tended to eat together, and so that transported itself to the campus. So one of the things we agreed, and which we did as long as we were there, was that we would always eat together in the evening, me and my brother.
Nice. Yeah, sure.
And for me, what that did was, about the loneliness. On one side, it filled that loneliness, sort of fed that there's somebody here. On the other side, I knew there was a set of eyes. But he never imposed at all in that way. But just having that connection every evening, I knew I had to do him proud. I knew, there's a brother here and it's about the space, the trust, and what does it look like. And he had every right to pull me up on so many things. But he always gave me the space. And because we had that meal together, I would share things and say, this happened, what do you think? That happened. And it just, and that's what meals do. Facilitating family meals, facilitating togetherness like that opens up a safe space where you can share. And I think that was ultimately my mum's comfort as well, knowing that he's there. He's quite a bit older than me, so that mature figurehead there to look after me as well.
Jazakallah khairan. Dr. Mahera, you are a parenting coach as well, mashallah. Yes. I wanted to ask you, what do you see as, in our times, what do you see the role of parenting coaches or parenting courses as being in our community? Why do we need them?
Yeah. And that's the question we always battle with, isn't it? Yeah. So sort of why?
Yeah, because our parents didn't need them, did they?
They didn't need them.
Yeah. That's the argument.
That is an argument. And I think although we say that our parents didn't need them, they had more of a circle of support than we did. Maybe growing up back home, but also coming here. Family dynamics are changing. So where we knew our parents, particularly mothers, we knew that our mums are at home. If I was sick, I'd be able to come home. If the school could call and there's somebody at home that I could come to. The worry and the anxiety for our children has shifted slightly, where there's two working parents. They wonder, if I'm off sick this week, is it going to put my parents out? Can they find childcare? Can they, there's a lot of worry that actually our children also take on board. When it comes to parenting, what I've realized is that, and I've been fascinated by this for a long, long time, and a lot of my studies and my education has, in a way, become a part of what I do. So I've always wanted to be in a place where I have access to the youth, I have access to parents, but I have access to schools, sort of the education system, because it's a triangulation. It's a way you all have to work together. And I remember the first time where I realized this is that I thought I could change the lives of young people and families through teaching. And after I graduated, I was married in my second year of my degree, had 2 children, and I had to defer my PGCE a couple of times. So I decided to go into teaching, and secondary in particular, because I thought teenagers like me, we have a lot of struggles we couldn't share with the community. Alhamdulillah, we had the circles, we had a circle of support to a certain degree. But when I started my teaching, there was one, and I was interested in the homeschool visits, the links, and I still struggle with this homeschool link as we say it, but it's actually school-home links. You don't get much of homeschool links. What you do get is school telling parents and families what to do and how to do it. Yeah, they parent in the home. So I challenged that label as well. So what I became involved in was this homeschool support, where teachers would go home for troubled children and visit the home. So there was one particular visit that I did with a head of year, and when we visited the home, this mother could not believe, she had other children, but this teenager was going off the rails, this young boy. And to me, it seemed pretty I could see where the root could be. He wasn't getting the positive attention that he required. And in school, what tends to happen is the naughty children there's so much negative attention given with positive incentive, if that makes sense. So you get sent to the head teacher and they say to you, you can access some lovely thing that's paid for, go to the museum. So we invest. And it's a confusing place for the child to be at. On the one hand, you're being disciplined or punished. On the other hand, you're getting all these nice incentives to be better. Whereas the good coasting kids, children, young people, they're expected to just carry on because they're good. And there's no recognition except for maybe 100%. certificate for attendance, and there's not much that goes into investing in them. So anyway, on this home visit, what I was taken back by was a shock on the mother's face of her child being in trouble. And how could it be? My child is so good at home, he's an angel, he's this, he's that. And the teacher saying, well, no, we've written to you here, we've said to you there. So the parents are kind of in a denial of what their child is up to and thinking it's a phase. They will come out of it. Teenagers, it's a phase. My husband did it, I did it, whatever, and then they'll come out and they'll be okay. And it was that experience that actually made me realize, is that parent in denial because she doesn't want to see her child in a bad light? Or are they in a denial because they don't have the tools to deal with it? Yeah? So is she in denial because she doesn't know what to do? What do I do? As soon as I acknowledge that my child is bad or not going on the right path and not engaging, the teacher's going to leave, and they have a set of tools and resources to deal with it at school. But what do I have? I've just been told my child is a bad child or is not on track. Now what do I do?
So when people don't have the tools, they tend to gloss over the problem, and paper over the cracks, and just pretend the problems don't exist.
Yeah, and what sometimes refer to it is like a spring effect. What happens then is that you either focus on the child's behavior, and you try to deal with it. So it becomes very behavior oriented. You're a bad child. You're not doing this right. Why aren't you doing this? Why are you not doing that? You're not praying. You're not fasting. You're not doing your homework. Yeah, you're picking on your sibling. So we sort of focus, excuse me, on their behavior, or we take it out on ourselves. I've done so much. You're not grateful. I've sacrificed so much. You're not. At least do it for me.
Right.
Have respect for me, honor me as a parent, and behave. But what's missing there is a connection with the child as a child, not projecting my story onto them and my experience onto them and my value system, which might coincide with theirs, but I don't know because I haven't really built a relationship. So what then happens is the gap gets bigger and bigger and wider, and you just start ranting and fighting over something where it's like the iceberg effect, where you focus on something that's in your face, in front of you, but you're not dealing with the underlying issues that actually caused it.
Dr. Mahera, can I take you back? Because, I'm a real advocate, in our Muslim community for mothers focusing on the home, especially in the early years. And I would say focusing solely or mainly on the home. And the reason for that is, apart from, the fact that, I have my own experience, I read quite extensively on the topic, psychologists, books about babies and the effects of, the attachment parenting and having that, especially that one person who's there, who's that constant kind of rock, who's just there. And I feel that one of the beautiful things about Islam, about our deen, is that within our marriage contracts, there is this recognition of the fact that motherhood and looking after the home is such a valued and such an immense project, I would say, right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He removes the kind of the burden, I would say, of having to provide for the family from the shoulders of women and from the shoulders of mothers. And He puts them quite squarely onto the shoulders of men. Now, I know that, cultures change, societies change, and there are certain shifts. And of course, especially as the children get older, there are the childcare needs they change, right? So however, I do worry, I must say, about our community that, for example, when I went to Malaysia, and even in this country, sometimes I meet sisters, and when I'm talking about motherhood and things like that, and they'll come to me and they'll say, I've just had a baby. My baby is just, within the first year or whatever. and my whole family is pressuring me to go to work. My whole family is pressuring me and saying, you know, I've got a degree. It's you know, you should be using your degree, right? As if mothering and raising the next generation of human beings is not, you know, enough of a worthy thing to do, you know, with your education, you know? So sometimes I worry that the gift that Islam gave us as women, which is to not carry that burden, right? And it's there for a reason, you know? I've read books like, for example, Why Love Matters by Sue Gerhardt, I believe. And in that book, she talks about how one of the greatest worries that women have is, especially if they don't have a partner, so single parents, is the financial burden. And it can be so great that it affects their parenting, right? And in that you can see, subhanAllah, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for that very reason, it seems one of the wisdoms is that he hasn't made that her primary concern. No. In our societies, that's not the case. You know, people don't look at the roles of men and women in that way anymore. I mean, in the wider society. And sometimes I fear that one of the things that made our parents' generation strong was the fact that there was somebody focusing on the home, you know. So wouldn't you say that one of the key means, and I'm not talking now as, you know, maybe it might not be politically correct, like to advocate this in a professional setting, right? But within our Muslim community, as people who talk to women, and wouldn't you say that one of the things that we've got to start advocating is that, you know what, we need people focusing on the home, especially in the early years. And something like looking after babies cannot just be, it's not the same. Somebody who loves a child looking after them, okay, and somebody who's paid a minimum wage, who has no connection with the child looking after them. There's just no comparison, right? Yeah. So don't you think that one of the key things that we need to start advocating again, and saying to our sisters that it's okay, you know, is being stay-at-home moms, or at least focusing on those early years, especially, even if that's the sole and you know, the focal point of their lives.
I totally agree with you, and I think it's so important for women to be able to own that narrative, and create that narrative. Absolutely. And recreate that narrative, because it is so important that we understand what our core duties are. As men and women in a society, that's what keeps the cogwheels going, and normality to be present in the family, and in society, as families being the cornerstone of society. What I would say is that, you know, what I find from my work, and I can share lots and lots of stories from the parenting courses and the coaching that I do, is what happens when you have a woman, a mother, the expectation of society for her to sacrifice, and it's seen as a sacrifice. We see it as our role, of primary role in the family, in the community, but in wider society, and it is a matter of sacrifice. You sacrifice sleep, you sacrifice. There's a lot of sacrifice that is involved, and part of that sacrifice is equated with being selfless. Yeah. Giving up a lot. So in a average couple where you have the first child, the expectation, say in our parents' generation, is that you wouldn't have heard of men doing the night shift. What is that? Right? Nappy changing. What is that? So that narrative has slowly started to change, where men need to be more hands-on. You have paternity leave. You have some parts of Europe where it's longer, and the benefits of that in a child's life. So although we have this model of the father being the breadwinner and the mother being the homemaker, I don't think it's so black and white in Islam. I don't think it's this image of, it's about your mindset, it's about the lifestyle, it is about what you want to, how you want to live as well. And as you earn more money, you want your eyes look upwards to better and prettier lifestyle, I guess. But in terms of just looking at the basic makeup of this child's, if we were to focus on a child, what is the need from that child? That child needs the father as much as the mother in order to be a whole child, and access to grandparents, right? Extended family. It is part and parcel of who you want to raise as a whole child. And I talk about this whole child quite a lot. So in this whole child, this child isn't just being raised by the mother, the father, the grandparents, and extended family. There's teachers, there's Arabic teachers, there's so many neighbors, there's so many people involved in that child's life. And I agree with you totally that there has to be a gatekeeper to facilitate all of those things, to monitor all of those things, to at the end of the day, to reflect on who's had an impact and effect. Now, if this child is going from adult to adult, space to space, that child, where does it offload at the end of the day? Where does it get to? Where does that child, how do they navigate? So children are very, very resilient, and that's what I found from my research. Credit to the children and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy on children. Yeah. But actually, as parents, even a stay-at-home mum, her complete role is just raising her children. You will see those children growing up to be quite unappreciative if that mother doesn't know the tools she needs to raise a whole child. Yeah. Yeah, how to discipline.
Yeah, because you could be a disengaged.
Yeah, disengaged mother being at home.
EastEnders all day,
absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
So it's not about who's at home and who's not at home. It's about how equipped you are to be able to raise the children in the context that you're raising your children. So here in the UK, we are raising, and I always ask my parents, how does Ali radiallahu anhu's hadith of play up to 7, teach up to 14, companionship up to from 14, how does it work with raising our children when they're seen as children up until 18? In the European, according to the laws that we have, they're seen children as a child up to 18, but they can sign up to being part of the army. They can have consent, marriage with consent from parents at the age of 16. There's a lot of discrepancy in the society that we live, whereas our rulings and our lessons that we can learn from our Deen is quite clear cut. It's clear instructions which we need in our parenting. So going back to what you were asking, that do we need to reshift that balance? Yeah. And yes, to a certain extent, I think those of us mothers who are working, women that work, they need to reset their mindset that actually, what is my ultimate focus? Yeah. What is my focus? Because for me, working isn't bringing in the money. It's being accountable to the intellect and the capacity and the resources that I've been given. Yeah. To be able to do that, but also to be a role model to my children, how they need to treat the next woman that they meet. Because it's taken for granted for a lot of young people, because we don't have the tools often, that our children think, well, that women just serve. Women just stay at home. Women just do this. And what I learned from my mum is that although she didn't have a full-time job or a part-time job, her dawah, her jama'ah, her community work was like a full-time job. Yeah. So what we learned from her is that you can be an amazing mother. You can also contribute. Yeah. So what I say to new couples, and I do a course with new couples and couples to be, and I say to them, does this marriage mean to you? Yeah. What are you expecting from each other? What is it you're expecting as a spouse, but also as a worshipper? Yeah. Ultimately, I have a higher role, a higher purpose as an individual, which I will be accountable to, because you're not going to go to the grave with me. Yeah. So when you think about those kind of roles and the checks and balances that we need to do, I think it enriches our parenting rather than take it away from us. And I do believe, and I sincerely believe, again from my personal experience, that ideally a mother, if the capacity is there, shouldn't work until the child goes to school. which I try to practice. That while at home, there are other things I can do.
I think that's kind of more what I'm getting at. Because I must say, like, you know, once we've had children, there's the responsibility that comes with that. You know, it's not about me anymore. You know?
No, it's not.
It's even if we were to look at it from, you know, the point of view of our intellectual like stimulation and things like that. I believe that mothering is as intellectually stimulating as you want to make it. You know, it depends on what you think being a mother is. For me, being a mother is being a nation builder.
But you need knowledge for that. You need to equip yourself for that. It cannot happen where you think, I'm a mother now, I'm at home, and I focus on that. Where do you seek that knowledge? It is intellectual. And that's what I want to home in onto. That for women, it's a journey. And what we suffer from is being left out or left behind. And we create that with each other. I don't think... Well, I don't want to bring men into the conversation, but I think it's just as women, if we focus on women, when I speak to another sister, oh, you got a degree, what are you doing with it? Yeah? And I have a baby, and I've just had a child, or I might have been in part-time work. So we may create this notion that you're missing out, or you're being left behind, or your career's not going to be the same. You've just got up to that ladder. Do you want to wait a couple of more years before you have a child?
Yeah.
Up to you get to that rank and then do that. So can you see how we sort of going on this journey that when am I ready? We didn't used to do that as much before.
Yeah.
So women's lives, we are changing where the ranks of that ladder is, what comes before what. But actually, motherhood is such a beautiful, I mean, it's a mercy. It's me knowing that I'm a woman. Not everybody can have a child, and that's again another story and another person's journey. But those of us who has been blessed with that, is it advisable to put it on hold for the sake of a career, for the sake of an education? Because for me, there's things in life, and I think our Deen equips us with that knowledge. Things that happen in life for a reason. We have hadith that says marry a woman that can bear lots of children, marry young women, and it's not off-putting people who marry later, but there's barakah and there's benefit in pursuing things like this, because now looking back, I'm so glad I had my children when I did. Alhamdulillah. Because now I'm able to enjoy it, and alhamdulillah, I'm going to be a grandmother soon, inshallah.
Wow.
So, you know, I'm inshallah, while I'm still able to enjoy, we will be able to do that. There's barakah, there's mercy, there's rahmah, there's so many things in following my body clock. And how I've been created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to carry that journey. Having a child at 40, and some of us do, and it's alhamdulillah wonderful, you can continue to do that. But if that's your first child, when there may have been an opportunity to have, I mean, I'm scared, I worry having conversations like this, because every woman's journey is different. And I think it's so important to recognize individuals as they are, their circumstances.
But I guess what we're talking about is
a general
what should we be advocating as the norm, right?
So, and now I could advocate a norm, but it might not fit a sister's life. At that point in time.
People have to take their own personal
so again, I think we need to be respectful and inclusive of individual journeys and stories as well. So I can sit here and say, no, you shouldn't go to work, but there might be a dire need. She might be the one with more qualification than the husband. And in a marriage where if she was to go to full-time work, would it negate, would it say that the father couldn't stay at home and be with the child? Would it lessen the experience of that child? So again, we need to, we're not shifting roles and saying that he's the woman now and she's become the man in the relationship. But is it a phase? Is it circumstance?
Are there periods when certain things need to happen?
But most importantly, I think the relationship between the couple is so important. The conversation, the arrangement, the understanding that exists between, because that will see them through that journey, and the narrative they create about each other to the children. Now, if the mother's going to work and the father is at home for a period of time, and the thing is that I'm useless, he's not a man, he's not being manly, and the society's feeding that, what will the children grow up thinking? I don't want to be like him, and they go the opposite way where they disrespect the father. And then the mother being seen as the man and wearing the trousers and is the decisions being made. But she could be just going to work. But alhamdulillah, in the family, the man is still the man, making family decisions, making those key, facilitating those conversations and being the leader of the family. Yeah. So we just need to, and again, I think it goes back to tools and understanding and knowledge, and being honest to yourself and the situation that you're in, and really being authentic. Why am I actually wanting to do what I want to do? Is it because so and so is doing it and I think I'm capable of doing more with a child at home? Or is it that actually for me, this is my focus, and rizq is from Allah, inshallah, alhamdulillah. Whereas if I focus on this child now, the barakah will be in our relationship. And I don't have to invest time when they're teenagers, when they're questioning who they are. So the reason for spending time with children when they're younger is you're investing in a relationship to go through the bottleneck of when they're going through the teenage years, although we don't believe teenage years exist in Islam, but they do go through hormonal changes. It's biological, adolescence. So that time you have a relationship where you're able to say, shall we have a chat?
Because I think that's really important, because what many people, although sacrifice is a part of life, we sacrifice things now, instant gratification, in order to gain something later, right? That's basically the story of life, of a successful life. But I think sometimes we talk about motherhood and the investment in motherhood as too much of a sacrifice, when actually it's an investment. What you're putting in is going to come out one day, even if you don't live to see the fruits of your children growing up and etc. Even in your grave, you'll benefit from the dua of that child. So I really just feel, subhanAllah, it's just, Dr. Mahera, I've had a few conversations with young mums who are quite, perhaps they're going through some kind of postnatal depression, or they're just baby blues or something like that. But often they really don't, the narrative hasn't been taught to them regarding what motherhood is. Like, why are you doing this? Why is this important? And I think what that does is it belittles motherhood. It breeds that sense of, I'm not doing anything. When actually, you know what, like, subhanAllah, there's so many, apart from obviously going to parenting courses and learning about parenting techniques, there's certain inbuilt things that Allah's put in us as mothers that we naturally do. Just the way we talk to our kids has a different effect than if a stranger was talking to them. Just the way we play with them, the love, it's they feel it, subhanAllah, it's and it's building their brains, literally building their brain connections, right? I think we've got to remind mothers how important they are. And
absolutely. And I think you and I, this is a big assumption I'm making, we have had the blessing of being raised in functioning families. Alhamdulillah, where Deen was a parcel of how we were raised. And that exists in a lot of families now. And often I wonder, why is it, maybe it wasn't talked about as much when we were growing up, but more and more children are questioning their faith, coming from practicing families, coming from madrasa background, coming from Islamic education background, agnostic, sort of the atheism. They're questioning their identity, gender fluidity. There's so many things that are going on in our community. Is it because as families we are so afraid that our children will lose their deen that we become quite, not militant, but quite desperate in imparting our deen as it's regimented. It's
a bunch of rules.
A bunch of rules. And so, one of the questions I asked mums to do when they go home is ask their children to describe them spiritually. How do teenagers see us as a spiritual being? And one mum was sharing, and I found it really interesting. And it's a repeat that I do hear, where the children say, well, Mum, I think you're quite religious. mashallah, you pray, you fast, you're paying a zakat. They are actions. But actually, those teenagers don't like their mom very much when it comes to the behavior. So when we think about our spiritual self, shouldn't our actions transform our behavior?
Right.
That we are nice to our children.
Things like being patient. Not losing our temper.
Yeah, not losing our temper, not judging them, not being suspicious, not checking through their bags without their permission. Lying, the small white lies that we say to protect something else. And they don't see it. So they see you as a religious person, but they don't...
Because of a bunch of tick box actions that you do.
Exactly. So as parents, we're not just we're not a religious only. We are also the adab and akhlaq, and all of that is so important in our...
It's not just rituals.
And so when we go to pray, what our children see is we're rushing because we don't want to... We're scared of the fire of hell. Yeah? I can't miss a salah. How often do we come out of a salah and say, I needed that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's grounded me. And our children hear us say that. Because that's your spiritual self. When I'm able to forgive my child and say, you know, wallahi, I'm only forgiving you because I'm afraid of Allah not forgiving me for the mistakes I might have made. I'm forgiving you. And can you imagine the forgiveness Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for you? The mercy, the blessings. And they connect to Allah initially through you.
Absolutely.
Yeah? So us being at home as mothers, often you'll find mothers who are exasperated, who feel unappreciated, who feel unloved, who feel unacknowledged. And if that's what stay-at-home motherhood is going to do to us, is it worth that journey? How do we enrich it? We need a collective.
Yeah.
We need to be with each other. We need to nurture each other's journey. We need to, and I agree with you, we need to tell each other, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. These are the joys.
I actually went on a parenting course once, and the first whole part of it, the first day of it, was you working on yourself.
Yeah, I think that's what parenting courses are. You find out who you are.
Yeah, I can imagine, subhanAllah. Yeah. So I do think that that's really important, isn't it? Sometimes it's really easy for us, for anyone really, to blame their situation, their spouse, their family, their this, the way I was brought up. There's so many things you can blame. But I think once you just say to yourself, you know what, I'm an adult.
Yeah.
Whatever's happened to me, right, I'm going to find a way to deal with it. And whatever kind of shortcomings I feel that I have, instead of blaming other things, you know, let me get on top of this. Let me find a way through this, because, you know, I have a mind and I have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He will help me if I take that responsibility on and seek help and seek a way out, a way to change my mindset and grow my mindset. So I think it's really important for all of us, but especially mothers and especially women in the community, where in a community that doesn't always value motherhood, right, in the wider society, to work on our own mindsets and actually question some of the messaging that we get, you know, from wider society. So for example, I'll just give you a couple of examples. Like, okay, is it okay for me to live within my means? You know, that sounds like a really basic question, right? But I think for our parents' generation, our mothers, they would not have this attitude of, you know what, I really want to have X, Y, Z, and because of that, now I'm going to have to sacrifice something that's more important for that, right? Now, I know, like you said, we can't say, you know, one size fits all. However, unfortunately, that kind of notion of living within your means has become radical now. And that's really strange, isn't it? Because as Muslims, subhanAllah, in all the books of purification and zuhd, it talks about qana'a, you know, this idea of living and being satisfied with what you have. That's not to say you should not be ambitious or have aspirations, but that is to say that actually probably the things that Allah has given you are enough for you, you know, for you to get on with. So I really think that some of these old, what people would think of as old, but really Islamic kind of attitudes and akhlaq, we need to revive them. This idea of, because subhanallah, Dr. Mahera, even when people do chase and chase and chase after dunya, right? So often they still don't feel satisfied. They still don't feel satisfied.
What are they chasing? Right. And it's a story that's been sold to us.
Yeah.
That there's a mirage there somewhere, and it looks really great.
Yeah.
And you're feeling quite thirsty, and you need to chase that. And I just going back to what you were saying, I find that really interesting. Is we need to get to a place where it's being grateful. Yeah.
Gratitude. Exactly.
Gratitude. So it's being grateful. For some people, the journey before getting to that is a whole journey.
Right.
Because from my coaching, what I find is that a lot of the parents that come to me come with issues with children. My child's not behaving. My child doesn't respect me. But actually, as we were saying, as you start to unpack, it's about the luggage and the baggage that they're carrying. So somebody who needs to live within their means, what was that experience for them?
Right.
Living within the means for their parents. Did it mean that they had to do without certain things? So for some children, it might be that everybody was wearing Nike and I had to wear Sainsbury's stuff or Asda's or whatever. Yeah, something from the market. Gola. Yeah. So something from the market. And for me, that experience was really painful. I don't want my child to have that. So they start to overcompensate. In order to compensate and overcompensate, you need money.
Yeah.
So you will go after...
Our generation does tend to do that.
Yeah, you will go after...
it's like...
You'll go after something that will make your children happy. But in the process, what you've done is forgotten that experience for me has made me grateful.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
It has made me grateful and I learned to share. For my child, what I'm giving them now is a journey of selfishness.
Right. They're just spoiling them.
You spoil them.
Yeah.
So the next time you say, well, honey, I can't afford that. They say, what do you mean? Get another job. I have an experience of where I went to visit a family where the teenager says, why can't I have that? Dad can just do cabbing at night.
Right? My son said that to us.
Yeah, so can you see the journey of somebody who's coming to an experience of living in their means can then go totally where they don't actually want to go.
Right. So because I completely see what you're saying, because sometimes, we've grown up seeing other people go on holiday every year.
Yeah.
And this idea has been fed to us by the media as well. Must go on holiday every year or every holiday time, right? And then we think that if we don't provide that for our children, they're going to be like scarred or something, right? For life. Yeah. When actually, when children look back on their childhoods, the things that they remember are not the material things. No, it's the feelings. It's this myth of quality time. When I say myth, what I mean is this idea that you can pack out your whole day and put a little slot in there for what you call quality time, and for that time to then to force yourself to have that time. Okay. I feel is a myth, because what happens is very contrived. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the magic of being a family and being, with your children, with your spouse, the magic of it happens when you spend extended amounts of time together. It's not just about a little schedule, a little slotted time in your, although sometimes that might be necessary, at difficult times. I think we need to change our mindset. We need to change our sense of priority, because sadly we might be raising children who value the wrong things.
And I might challenge a bit of that.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So what from my experience of working in the community, and I think this is where the spirituality and the deen actually, are they separated? They should be hand in hand. So your suggestion that there should be extensive time that we spend, and that's there. So we are spending lovely time with our children, but each child has a different need. So when you're spending that time together, a teenager won't speak about their stuff in front of their younger sibling.
That's true.
They have some stuff they need to privacy. And you're teaching them that you're important enough for me to give you this time where we can bond. That won't happen in the absence of a relationship. Because what parents try to do is create this quality time in the absence of a spiritual relationship.
That has been built up
over. Yeah. So the fabric of your family is that we're a team. And we're a team. But there are times where I suggest to, if you've got teenagers in the house, minimum at least twice a week where that child knows my mum's free, decluttered here to focus on me.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what Definitely. I term a special time, not in the absence of everything else. It's a part and parcel of a norm that happens in the family. So I remember, growing up and that image, and you're so right about the feelings. So I just remember the Sunday mornings, particularly that we were talking about, that after Fajr, we would all be expected to read Quran together. I didn't like it very much growing up. I just used to think, I'm sleepy, I'm tired. As now children will say, it's such a big deal, But what I do remember is that what my dad would do is after we read Quran, we would go for a walk down the canal. So we had a canal next to us. We would go down and walk. On the way back, there's a bakery. And to this day, us siblings, we still go and buy bread from that bakery. And so the bakery... Nostalgia. It's nostalgia, but it's the feeling of togetherness. So the bread that we used to bring... We didn't have fancy jam. We didn't have... All we knew was anchor butter, right? So butter. And the hot bread.
Oh, wow.
We just used to take a piece of bread and, butter it, and we used to eat.
It's because of the love.
It's the love. It's that togetherness. It's the warmth of the bread and breaking bread together. Just this... And we felt like a team. And my mum instilled that concept of being a team so much that she wouldn't even let us go to play outside when other kids were playing. When they'd gone home, she'd send us all out to play. You learn to play with each other.
Right.
I used to think, Mum, why? It doesn't make sense. But looking back on it now, it's gratitude. But it's a journey. I don't think you'd appreciate it as a teenager. But what you do need are other people that will say to you, you will appreciate it one day.
Yeah.
Bear with it. Whereas now what we're saying to other parents is just give them mobile.
Yeah.
Otherwise they'll play up. Just give this.
Lazy parenting. Yeah? Sorry.
It's uninformed, lazy, because we are not equipped to have those difficult conversations at home. We haven't, I'm afraid to have that conversation. Why aren't you praying? What if they turn around and say, I don't want to pray? I would rather just watch.
So it's like avoidance.
Difficult conversations, conflict. Do you think you're actually a Muslim? Sometimes we put our children up against the wall and ask them, I don't even think you're... I think you need to take your shahada again. And say, well, actually, I don't want to. What do you do then?
We shouldn't have even
put that idea into their heads. So the mercy and the love that we need to show our children should be the base of relationships that can facilitate those difficult conversations.
Absolutely.
And I think we are quite quick to write off children because we're not at a place to deal with what they're posing for us. And that's our growth. If we're able to do that, we grow together.
You see, tarbiyah is such an ongoing thing, isn't it?
It is ongoing.
Like, subhanAllah, sometimes I think mothers are like the voice in your head, or you could be if you choose to be that. Yeah. So your child wins something, your child succeeds at something. Who's going to plant the thought in their head that, look what Allah gave you. Thank Allah. So many things could have gone wrong, but it all worked out for you. Who's going to give them that almost like awakening to the gifts that they have if we're not mindful and we're not present and we don't see the role of motherhood as more than just feeding and cooking,
the physical
the physical nourishing, right? SubhanAllah, I think sometimes I reflect back on, like, how did I know Allah? And I think my mother, she used to gather us together as children regularly, and she used to make dua in aloud, so that in Urdu, so that we would know, who is this Allah? How many of us have done that?
Back to him.
SubhanAllah, how many of us do that? We talk about Allah, we say, oh, Allah is the greatest, Allah created this, Allah did that, Allah. And it's, like you said, a list. It's a bunch of rules, it's a list. But when you actually sit with your mother and she's crying and she's calling on Allah, she's saying, "Oh Allah, we are so sinful, Ya Allah. Please, Ya Allah, forgive us. Ya Allah, we try our best, but we still fall short, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, thank you for the blessings you've given us." And then she lists the blessings that you hadn't even thought of, right? And then she goes through each member of the family and she kind of talks to you about, "Oh Allah, you know, our father, he's out all day. He meets
So you're
difficult
raising
situations.
the station.
All the things that he does, bless him, make his, give us barakah in our rizq." And she would go through each person and, you know, you'd wait for your turn, you know, what's she going to say about me? And that whole experience, subhanAllah, I understood and I felt Allah more from that than somebody giving me a book about Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Uluhiyyah, Asma and Sifat, and, you know, a bunch of facts, you know, which is unfortunately, subhanAllah, the other day in the bookshop, I saw a book of Tawheed. I thought, okay, this is going to connect children to Allah. And all it was basically a bunch of let's say, jargon. I'm sorry, you know, for a child, that's not going to build their iman. They don't know who Allah is by knowing that there's these different categories and this and that.
And it goes back then again to practice, isn't it? So our practice of making dua, you as a child sitting there expecting your name to be called, so your significance in her life.
Right.
So you feeling significant in your parents' life, but also she has made you significant in Allah's eyes. Yeah. So each person has that significance in that relationship. It's again about relationships and how we build our children's relationships to us first. So that tarbiyah for many families do come, but it's after gratifying our ego first. Yeah?
Yeah.
So was it that I helped you that you got your grades? You know, I told you to revise and look what the benefit it's had. So we try to nourish our ego first before we say, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has facilitated this for you and be grateful. Whereas that should be first. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be first in our conversation with our child.
Right.
You know, even when they've made a mistake, it could have been so worse. Allah has your back.
Yeah.
Subhanallah. Do 2 rakah shukr prayer.
Exactly.
So those kind of things are so important.
Who's going to say that?
Who's going to say that? If
we're not mindful.
Yeah, if we're not mindful. And that needs to exist. And I think I talk about extended families quite a lot. The uncles and the aunts and the grandparents. And many parents nowadays will say that, alhamdulillah, we have become practicing. Yeah? My family are not. I have somebody who's abusing drugs. I have somebody who smokes. I have somebody who's not as they should be, how they dress. So there's always issues that might influence my children. What do I do? Yeah, how do I give them access? And unfortunately, then what happens is your children are then isolated. And we haven't even spoken about families in conflict, you know, divorce, separation, life for those children, and the relationship between the adults. So ultimately what happens is children grow up creating some narratives about people in their family. And when they get the chance, they want to know. So they're curious. So when they do go out and then they find out, no, uncle actually is a nice person, but he's struggling with something. Yeah? Or, okay, dadu might be, you know, grandmother might be like this, but she didn't know any better. This is after a conversation and finding out for themselves. What then tends to happen is that child starts to resent the parents because they've missed out on all these years of relationships. Now, I understand we need to protect our children from negative influence. And research shows that there's benefit in, you know, sort of navigating that space for them. But there is a way of doing that where you can have honesty around it, not half-baked conversations, so that you create fear in your children that keeps them away from certain people. Yeah, which is very wrong, and it's not Islamic. You have made it's slander in some sense.
Can you give an example?
Yeah? So an example would be that your uncle isn't good for you. I don't want you to spend time with your uncle or an aunt or whoever it is. They don't dress properly. They are not good in the sight of Allah, and this may influence you. They're smoking. They're doing this. They're doing that. Yeah. What they haven't maybe added to that is, you know, that's the person. These are their actions. The person is kind. The person is generous. The person will come to you with a snap of a finger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
To protect you. However, I just am worried about their behavior.
Right. Separate the behavior
from the person.
Especially when it's a relative.
When it's a relative, when it's a neighbor, whoever it is. Yeah. Whatever your child brings to you, first unpack, what's the person like?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Are you talking about the person? The akhlaq of that person?
Yeah.
Again, it's just action. If they have said they're a believer and they are a Muslim,
yeah,
even if they're not, might have non-Muslim families. Are they kind? Are they generous? Who are they? So as a person, they might be wonderful. But then you focus on the action. So next time you go, can you say to your uncle, don't smoke when I'm there? So you start to equip your child to be the change maker. Excellent, and that breeds and builds their identity.
And usually they can get away with it.
They can get away with it where you can't.
Yeah.
Whereas that adult knows you are the gatekeeper to that child, keeping that relationship away. So any chance they'll find, they will try to connect. Or they will alienate. And it's not good for the child, ultimately, because I've seen time and time again where what you've tried to do backfires and you end up being the not so good person because you've made somebody blacklisted, someone, and you didn't tell me that they were a nice person. They actually love me. Right. As their niece.
You're denying your child the love of that person.
The love of that person, the connection of that person.
When maybe the bad thing that they're doing or the bad habit or whatever it is.
It can be managed.
Right. And it's not the whole of that person.
No, the whole of that person.
It's one aspect of them.
Yes. And that could be a trigger to change the other person.
Absolutely.
You could be
that relationship.
The relationship, the respect and the honour you've given to that person will breed in your child how they honour and respect the next homeless person they may see, which society has written off. Yeah? And they start to see, actually, I'm a part of that problem. If I go and speak to that person, maybe I can find out their story rather than throwing pennies at them.
Right.
Yeah, or not paying pennies because they'll misuse it. So we create social construction, we call it, narratives around situations and people, and we actually try to fill a part of our vessel we're uncomfortable with through our child.
Yeah.
And that's not a good place to be at. And sometimes it takes a bit of support to be able to understand what you're doing. I've had parents who have a child says, my mom doesn't love me. I've tried everything.
Saying that?
A child. So I do a course with young people. And one of the questions we look at is, and I share the story of how difficult it is. The verse in the Quran, pain upon pain. What does that mean? So I say to the children, as a mother, I can share parts of this story with you. This is how difficult night shifts are, breastfeeding, walking around when you get heavier, and it's hard work. And one of the things they say is, well, we didn't know this. First of all, we just know that it was hard, but through biology we might learn why. But actually, emotionally, what it did for my mother or my father, I don't know. So that's the first part. The second thing that they mention is, what is it that we can never do anything that's ever good enough in the sight of my parents.
All right.
We're never good enough. There's another milestone that's been created, another hurdle that I have to.
Another person they're comparing you to.
Another person they need to compare. Yeah, they need to be nice to or good to, or another A star. And there was one particular story I remember of a girl that she was saying, I really feel my mum doesn't like me.
Subhanallah.
I really feel my mum doesn't like me. I really feel whatever I do, she finds a point of hers to pick out the negative. How she can say to me that I'm not good enough. And so we ended up having coaching with the mum. And what transpired was that she was a single parent. And her child reminded her of her ex-husband, the father of the child. So whenever she was in the company of this child, memories would flood back and come back. And so she's not rejecting the child. She doesn't know how to deal with her experience. So her child, even if she smiled, it would remind. And when the daughter started to understand that, first of all, there was a lot of anger.
Yeah.
That it's not my fault. Yeah. So there had to be a lot of family coaching to get them to a place that how do you overcome that every time she comes near you, you don't flinch. Every time it's the body language. It's what we don't say often affects our children. So it is important that if we are going through conflict, to give a reasonable explanation to your child that there's difficulties. we will work through it. It's not about you. Yeah. And it may result in something you might not expect, but this is something that they need to be a part of. Otherwise they start to self-doubt and they think it's about them, and they can't understand, and it then breeds a whole cycle of issues for that child. Because if you can't connect to your parent, there's connection issues, there's attachment issues, and it will continue in that child's life as well. So there's and it goes back to, do we need courses? Do we need support? And I think we all do. We all have experiences of how we shape stories. So there's 9 of us, and each of us, we could have all been sitting in the same room, but we've taken a different experience away.
It's absolutely true.
Right?
Yeah.
And if we don't share those experiences, we're not able to say to them, but could you think from another perspective?
So as a sibling, sometimes you remember something.
Yeah.
And your sibling remembers it a completely different way. Like, you had a great experience, they had a terrible experience, and there's no point saying, well, you're wrong.
No. But that's their perception.
That's how they lived it.
Yeah, that's their truth. So it's important to have those conversations to work out each other's truths.
And why,
and come to a place where you can accept and disagree, but accept that this was but how do we move forward?
Dr. Mahera, I completely agree with you especially with the teenagers, having that one-to-one time. And when I was talking about quality time not being just little slots, I was actually, I didn't mean that kind of example. I was actually drawing on something that psychologist Dr. Steve Biddulph talks about in his book, Raising Happy Children, I think. He talks about the myth of quality time. But what he means is this idea that you can spend most of your day doing something completely different and draining all your energy into all of that, and then just slotting your kids in.
It's not pretentious. Right. That can be pretentious. And the child knows it. So
that's what he meant, and that's what I meant by that. But absolutely, I think each of our children need to have one-to-one time with their parents, because their dynamic when they're together is completely different, to when you've got them fully focused, one-on-one, like you said, undivided attention. And they get so much out of that, mashallah.
They do, mashallah. And it's very grounding. And I always say, as human beings, we look for 3 things. We look for connection, we look for belonging, and we look for direction. And if any one of those are missing, you see restlessness.
Connection,
direction,
and belonging. Wow.
And these are 3 things I found from my research, the conclusion that I've come to, and I kind of promote and I believe from what I've read from Islam and from practice and from research, is that if any one of those are missing or shaky, you'd have restlessness in the individual, and then they start to chase after things that they think is going to give them that. So if it's belonging, your children will start to seek other friends, gangs, and outside company. Whereas if they know that they have a sense of belonging at home, that's the rope that pulls them back in,
right?
When they should come in, because they know Mummy's going to miss me, not she's going to tell me off,
right?
Yeah, so I'm going to be missed. Or actually, I was given a chore. If I don't do that chore, so and so is not going to get their meal. So there's a connection, So the belonging creates a connection, and those relationships we talked about, the spirituality, the deen being embedded in the spiritual self, is really important, because then when you want the one-to-one time, it's natural, it's authentic, and it's enriching. It shouldn't be replacing something else. So normally what happens is when you have conflict in the family, you ask for a one-to-one. So you're already going into that one-to-one on a negativity.
Right.
Whereas when you have those one-to-ones, to bring up a negativity is not a big deal. It's a part and parcel of our time together.
Right.
We can advise each other, we can guide each other, and that's also where the direction comes. Because you get to know the person Yeah? So you have an individual direction, but you also have a collective direction. So in order to create that belonging, the sense of connection and togetherness, the direction, you need to advocate and facilitate in families the family time. And we both shared the boundaries of family time that we've experienced growing up.
Yeah,
alhamdulillah. Sometimes when you have lots of siblings, you might not get that from your parents, the one-to-one time. You get it from siblings.
Elder siblings.
Younger siblings. So I got a lot of the one-to-one nurturing from my older siblings.
Oh, that's nice.
Who would, where I found my direction. Where they would say to me, this is your gift, this is your talent, this is the skill Allah is giving you. Yeah? What does beauty mean? Is it the physical beauty or is it the inner beauty? So such enriching conversations where I used to go away and think, well, what that guy is doing, I'm not interested. Because I have value where it means something. They're not going to disappear the next day. Whereas if you don't like something in me tomorrow, you might disappear. Yeah. So the consolidating those feelings are so important. And I guess for me, in a marriage, in a sort of a family setting, to create those 3 things, there are other 5 things I would promote.
Are those your 5 P's to fulfilling relationships?
Yes.
Please share them with us.
So those really, normally I cover these 5 P's in the couples course as a start, and I think that's where it starts. But actually it's in any relationship. So for me, the first thing I would focus on is the prayer, and you talked about the dua. But actually, where is our focus? Ultimately, where is our thread of connection? It's to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the sight of Allah, we are all worshippers, and that's our main duty.
Yep.
I have created you to worship me, and that's our main role. So in the family, we all know one day it's just going to be ya nafsi. I'm only going to think about myself. So in order to do that, I need you to help me. Yeah. So this is where the team spirit comes in. So the prayer, if there's any possibility of praying together at home, doing dua together at home, really, really emphasize on that.
Establish the prayer in your home.
Yeah, and I have an example of a mother, lovely example. She said when things get really difficult at home, she just looks at everybody and says, you know what, let's do a gratitude circle.
Oh.
Yeah, let's just do a gratitude circle. No one can deny that. So then she gets everybody around, whoever's in the room. She won't try and call others from the other room. In that situation, whoever's involved, just sit on the carpet, wherever you are, let's do a gratitude circle. So what you've done is then taken the conflict out to get to a place where you can deal with it. So you're regulating, you're regulating your emotions, yourself to be at that place. We then, I think, as a family, there needs to be some things that you plan together. Planning needs to happen. So that's the second P. So what kind of things are you planning in the family? And the third P is progress. So in a way, are you stagnant as a family? Yeah. In order not to be stagnant, there needs to be planning. So it's a little bit of a cycle. Yeah. So planning and progress are the 2 second and third P's. So when you're planning, we tend to, as parents, focus on the academic side and the adab side and the thing as a. But actually, as parents, planning should also include what are you contributing? Yeah, what is your contribution? How does society benefit from you? How does your family benefit from you? Yeah. So what role do you play as an individual in the greater picture?
Right.
Okay, so the plan and the progress. The fourth, I would say, is this pact. As a family, there needs to be a pact. It's like your family rules. What are your top 3 core values you're going to live your life by as a family? Yeah.
Oh, I really like that.
Yeah, it's either 3 values or 5 rules or whatever. You have these ground rules and classroom rules, but our family, where are our rules? It's in our parents' heads. They swap and change, according to our mood and where we are. So having this pact, when we make these rules together, these value systems together, we sign up to them, hand on hand. It's a bay'ah. We sign up to this and we'll live by it. What that does is helps the parents to put in consequences, agreed consequences. So it's a learning. Every opportunity is a teaching moment in parenting, I believe. Yeah, rather than being a fight. It's an opportunity. How can I teach my child to be a better person? Which means I need to regulate myself. So this pact is this team effort. There's a safe space. This is where we bring it together. This is where we fight, love, and we have it out. So we can deal with the big bad world out there. So the pact. And the last thing I would say is to protect. So the 5th P I say is to protect. So whatever happens, we protect each other's honor.
Wow.
We protect each other's dignity.
MashaAllah.
And we respect each other. Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. So this protection, like we say, is garment for one another. It's not fixed. It flows with you. It bends with you. It takes your curves as it should. So it means there's understanding. There's conversation. There's mutual respect and honor. So if you can remember that in a family as your, the way you protect each other, then you wouldn't go and belittle each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
You wouldn't go and
no matter what happens within your family, like when you're having an argument, you might highlight somebody's faults, blah, blah, blah. But now to take that outside.
These are your rights. Yeah. You protect each other's rights as individuals, and which includes honoring.
Because it's so easy, isn't it, Dr. Mahera, that for parents to, because, when they're little, they're babies, we talk about them all the time.
Yes, absolutely.
But as they get older, things change. And we have, subhanAllah, sometimes, I might tell one of my kids off, and then my parents have come round, and the kids might be worried, like, are they going to discuss anything about me? Yeah. But I'll completely let go of that and start talking about the great things that that child's been doing, right?
Isn't it?
And I want him or I want her to realize that, you know what, I've got your back.
Yeah.
And I love you. I care about you. When I tell you off, I know it's not pleasant, but I love you and I care about you so much that now that somebody from the outside is here, outside our little family, I'm only going to tell them about the good things because that's between us. We're going to sort that out. Yeah. And I think the message that we give our kids when we do that is, I believe in you.
But you're also honouring them. And you're respecting
important.
them. You're
important. Worthy of respect.
Yes.
MashaAllah. Yeah.
And it just takes me back to a story, an experience I had when one of my brothers, MashaAllah, he also has 9 children. MashaAllah.
MashaAllah.
And Mubarak. And his wife, I remember my sister-in-law was changing her baby. And we had a family gathering. So there was kids walking in and out, us walking in and out. But she was really irritable. My sister-in-law, not irritable in a negative way, but she was getting quite agitated. That's the word. And so I said to her, "Baby, are you okay? What's wrong?" She said, "Oh, I'm just trying to change." And it was a little daughter. I'm just trying, and I don't think it would have made a difference what gender the baby is, but she was changing the baby, and I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "Oh, I'm just trying to change the baby." I said, "Oh, don't worry. We're not looking, and it's okay. It's a baby." She said, "No, it's not okay. I am responsible for safeguarding my daughter's honour and dignity and their haya. Where else will she learn from?" And I thought that was such a beautiful example of the role that we have as parents, that when they are little, it's not okay to talk about them as we wish. It's not okay to have them, while I tell little white lies on the phone, saying, if they pick up the phone, say, "Just tell them I'm not here." Yeah. So it's those little things that actually create the bigger picture.
Exactly.
And that's why I call my book The Family Jigsaw, because it's not just one piece that creates a child. It's a set of experiences. It's a whole load of, suitcase of experiences that develop a child to become this, inshallah, wonderful adult that we want to see them. And we can't do it alone. We do need to find them role models. We need to find them mentors. We need to find good teachers. And that's part of our social engineering that we might do. But ultimately, they need to be supported in order to understand these 5. I'm sure there's lots of things, but for me, I've come up with these 5.
They're beautiful. Can you just repeat the 5 again?
Yeah, so quickly? The prayer, the connection to Allah, the plan. So we need to plan together as family. To progress, so we need to see some progression in that. A pact.
A family pact.
A family pact, a couple pact as you venture on that journey to become the family. And the last one is to protect.
protect each other's honor,
to be able to do that.
MashaAllah. Well, Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Mahera. Subhanallah, inshallah, we must have you back, because I would love to speak to you about conflict and marriage, and how to overcome issues there, because mashallah, you are an expert, and we really appreciate you being here.
Well, I feel honored to be here.
Alhamdulillah. And I'm sure our listeners and viewers will agree that, mashallah, that was a very fruitful discussion. Jazakallah khairan, especially for the 5 Ps. They were just amazing. Mashallah, I'm definitely going to be implementing those, inshallah. Brothers and sisters, that's the end of another episode. Please share and like and spread the good word about Ilmfeed Podcast. Mashallah, we were trending #1 in quite a few countries in the Islam category, all over Europe, especially. So, help us to spread the word, to spread the goodness, to spread the inspiration that we're trying to spread. And with that, I will bid you farewell. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.